Good evening. This is the June 24th, 2026 meeting of the San Francisco County Transportation Authority Community Advisory Committee, or CAC. I'm Kat Siegel, Chair of the CAC. Our Vice Chair is Naj Daniels. I'd like to thank our clerk, Amy Sayung, and our operator, Daniela Rible, for this meeting. Madam Clerk, please do a roll call to ensure we have quorum, and then please read your announcement about public comment.
Member Bars. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, everyone. CAC members, when I call your name, please say present to ensure quorum. Member Bars absent. Member Baumgarten.
Baumgarten present.
Baumgarten present. Vice Chair Daniels absent. Member Ford.
Ford present.
Ford present. Member Kim.
Kim present.
Kim present. Member Labaro absent. Member Levine.
Levine present.
Levine present. Member Margarita absent. Member Milford Rosales.
Milford Rosales present.
Milford Rosales present. Member Ortega.
Ortega present.
Ortega present. Chair Siegel.
Siegel present.
Siegel present. Chair, we have quorum. Also, public comment will be available for each item on this agenda via telephone by calling one of the numbers listed on the front of the agenda or joining the meeting through the Zoom link. Once you join, you will be able to listen to the meeting as a participant. To make public comment on an item, when the item is called, members of the public participating by Zoom wishing to speak should use the raise hand feature or dial *9. Do not press *9 again, or you will be removed from the queue. When you are asked to unmute yourself, press *6 or the unmute button to unmute yourself. The live operator will advise that you are allowed 2 minutes to speak. When your 2 minutes are up, we will move on to the next caller. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. We'll move to the chair's report. Thank you to Amy Sayung, our clerk, for sending the CAC the executive director's report after the board meeting. As noted in the report, signatures were submitted for 2 transit-related citizen initiatives for this November 2026 ballot. A regional transit sales tax measure received 305,000 signatures across 5 Bay Area counties, and if approved by voters, would provide funding for regional transit operators. In San Francisco, the Stronger Muni for All initiative qualified for the November 2026 ballot and would provide funding to support and expand SFCTA transit services if approved by voters. I'd like to share an outreach announcement related to the West Side Network study, which is also the subject of an agenda item this evening. The Transportation Authority project team will host a community outreach event this weekend to share information about the study and gather resident feedback on travel patterns and priorities. The event will take place on Sunday, June 28th from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Outer Sunset Farmers Market. Community members are encouraged to stop by, learn more about the study, and share their input. For more information, visit sfcta.org/projects/westside-network-study. Welcome to Diana Labaro, our new District 11 representative on the CAC. I'm not sure that she's here yet, but we do expect her to be joining us for the first time tonight. Looking forward to that. CAC members, staff, and public commenters in the room, please be sure to speak closely and directly into our exciting brand new microphones so folks attending virtually can hear you. Please limit your questions to a max of 2 questions per agenda item so that we can keep the meeting moving. And then CAC members and folks in the room, please turn off or silence all electronic devices and computer notifications for this meeting. That's it for announcements. Are there any questions or comments from CAC members on the chair's report? Not seeing any. Is there anyone in the hearing room wishing to give public comment on the chair's report? Not seeing anyone. Operator, is there any remote public comment on the chair's report?
There is no remote public comment for this item.
Great, thank you so much. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Items 3 through 5 comprise the consent agenda. Staff is not planning to present, but is available to answer questions. Do any CAC members have any questions or comments on the consent agenda? Not seeing any questions or comments from members. Is there anyone in the hearing room wishing to give public comment on the consent agenda? Not seeing any. Operator, is there any remote public comment on the consent agenda?
There is no remote public comment for this item.
Great, thank you. May I have a motion and a second to approve items 3, 4, and 5 on the consent agenda? Moved by Member Kim, seconded by Member Milford Rosales. Madam Clerk, would you please take a roll call vote?
On the motion to approve items 3 through 5 on the consent agenda, Member Bars absent. Member Baumgarten?
Baumgarten, aye.
Baumgarten, aye. Vice Chair Daniels absent. Member Ford?
Ford, aye.
Ford, aye. Member Kim?
Kim, I.
Kim, aye. Member Labaro absent. Member Levine?
Levine, I.
Levine, aye. Member Margarita absent. Member Milford Rosales?
Milford Rosales, aye.
Milford Rosales, aye. Member Ortega?
Ortega, aye.
Ortega, aye. Chair Siegel?
Siegel, aye.
Siegel, aye. There are 7 ayes. The consent agenda is approved.
Great, thank you so much. We'll move on to item 6, adopt a motion of support to allocate $3 million and appropriate $125,000 in Prop L funds for 6 requests. And Rachel Seberg, Transportation Planner, is with us to present this item.
Hi, good evening. We have 6 allocation requests tonight. Sorry, there we go. The first request is from Public Works for $368,000 for street repair and cleaning equipment. Requested funds will be used to purchase a new front end loader to replace one that has exceeded its useful life. The new loader is compliant with California Air Resources Board and current emission standards. Next, Public Works is seeking $768,000 to repair public sidewalks and curbs at about 200 locations not due to tree damage. Damage at these locations is typically caused by trucks driving up on curbs, old age, heavy equipment, vehicular accidents, or poor original construction. The tree maintenance fund is used to repair sidewalks damaged by city-maintained trees. Locations are determined by a combination of Public Works inspection and public complaints and prioritized based on project readiness, community support, and time-sensitive urgency. Next is a request for about $1.2 million from Public Works to construct 34 curb ramps at 6 intersections in districts 4, 5, 7, 9, and 10. This curb ramps project meets the city's obligations under federal and state accessibility statutes, regulations, and policies to provide curb ramps that are readily and easily usable by people with disabilities. And the list of locations can be found in your packet materials. The next request is a collaboration between the Recreation and Parks Department with Mercy Housing and Public Works to calm traffic, improve access to Visitation Valley Middle School, and better connect the Visitation Valley and Sunnydale neighborhoods to McLaren Park's program areas and trail network. The scope includes new sidewalks, new and upgraded crosswalks, a 2-way cycle track on Visitation Avenue between Mansell Street and Leland Avenue, and an off-road multi-use path connecting Visitation Avenue to Sunnydale and Hertz Recreation Center. There are some special conditions to note for this request. First is an amendment to the Equity Priority Transportation Program 5YPP to reprogram $250,000 from the Visitation Valley and Portola Community-Based Transportation Plan, or CBTP, implementation placeholder to the subject request. This placeholder is intended to fund implementation of pedestrian, bicycle, and traffic calming improvements recommended through the CBTP, which was completed in 2023. The subject project is recommended in the CBTP and also includes elements of the recommended Visitation Valley Greenway Connector. SFMTA has expressed support for this 5YPP amendment and anticipates requesting the remaining $750,000 in placeholder funds to implement plan recommendations later in 2026. The recommended allocation is also conditioned on the project securing full funding for the construction phase, namely Transportation Fund for Clean Air Funds, which is a separate item on this agenda and anticipated for board action on July 28th, 2026, and PG&E funds anticipated Board of Supervisors action in July of 2026. Next is SFMTA's Safe Streets Evaluation Program, which tracks progress and measures performance for key traffic calming, bicycle, and pedestrian safety projects that support San Francisco's street safety initiative. Propel funds will support pre- and post-data collection and analysis of the list of proposed projects shown in the allocation request form. The projects are primarily quick builds, the annual citywide bike count, and a rectangular rapid flashing beacon study. For more information and evaluation results, please visit the website shown on the slide. And the last request is to provide $125,000 each to the Transportation Authority and SFMTA to support the Neighborhood Transportation Program. The Transportation Authority's Neighborhood Program, or NTIP, funds planning, development, and implementation of community-based neighborhood-scale transportation improvements. This request provides support for an NTIP coordinator role at the Transportation Authority and the SFMTA to support Transportation Authority board members' efforts to identify potential NTIP projects, to develop proposed scope, schedule, budget, and funding plans to support allocation requests, and to conduct project delivery oversight. And with that, we can take any questions. We have project managers available in person and remotely. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for the presentation. Member Kim.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question about public works, sidewalk, and curb repair. Public works here or in the remote?
We have public works staff available remotely for this one.
Yeah, my question is, here's around 200 location will be repaired with this fund, and I see the document around 1,000 spaces is a backlog. And could you divide, how many damaged space not related to tree, and how many space damaged from tree?
I just want to clarify that for all of these repairs, these are not due to tree damage.
Right, but I'm asking the backlog, total number.
I think we have Mariana available from Public Works remotely. Who might be able
Yes, you do. Can you? Yeah. So the 1,000 that you see, Supervisor Kim, is that's just related to, that's non-tree related sidewalk repair. It has nothing to do with tree related sidewalk repair.
And could you tell me how many spaces related to tree?
And now I'm just gonna throw this out as speculative right now, right? So we're probably looking at about, maybe on the record, about 2,000 locations.
Yeah, I mean, that's my second question. In CTA, I see multiple times we allow the prop air money to implement trees. But however, whenever sidewalk repairs comes up, it always not related from the tree. Is there any reason this is the public works, prioritize the sidewalk not damaged from tree, or CTA doesn't allow to spend money for damage the sidewalk from the tree?
Well, right now, specifically for this particular allocation, which is Prop L, it is for non-tree related sidewalk repair. Our tree related sidewalk repair is generally funded under our TMF funding. So it's tree maintenance fund repair, that the allocation for those type of repairs. So you have two different fundings. Today, we're specifically talking about Prop L funding, non-tree related sidewalk repair versus our TMM funding, which is allocated to repairing tree related sidewalk repair.
Yeah, I understand. But the reason I asked this question, I'm small business owner. I walking down on Gary. So normally sidewalk condition really poor, damaged by tree rather than other things, because tree can lift, sidewalk more than 3 inches. So almost like wheelchairs and cannot go over it. So it's a very serious issue. But like this case, I see the job list, most of them the avenue, not the main street. This is important too, but normally like Gary, Clement, California, that's the main street. A lot of people use it, not only for shopping, it's for uh, walk to the walk and then ride a bus. So that's the most usage happens. But however, we always funding not damaged from the tree. I think this is time we more focusing on damaged by tree as well, especially in a merchant corridor, which is the most busy area.
Right. Well, we do have flexibility in terms of prioritizing a lot of and I think I'll just generalize it now since we're talking about two different types of repairs or causes of repair, one being that age and damage and the other being, sidewalk damage due to tree root intrusions. And so I guess maybe I would like to say, first of all, that this year and in prior years, right, that we not only focus on busy corridor areas, and I'd like to say that we're experiencing this is all over the city of San Francisco. It is not just in highly populated areas, such are busy areas such as the Sunset District or the Richmond District. We're experiencing this all over the city, and ended up this year alone, Public Works, and not talking about other entities or contractors that the city is employing to tackle this issue with tree-related sidewalk repairs. But in and of itself, this year alone, we repaired over, and I know it just seems like one area, but we repaired over 113,000 square feet of sidewalk. Not only that, but then we also, and so that's somewhat doubled of what we're doing. And like I said, and I think this is the urgency that the city has put on it in trying to mitigate a lot of these repairs that are desperately needed, like I said, so to prevent and to mitigate, trips, slips, and falls and incidents and claims against the city. We have also slicing contractors. We have contractors that are part of our CERT program, our ASAP program, that is pulled from the Bureau of Street and Mapping. So, I don't know how to say, oh, just give us time, right? Because that would, something that in a lot of instances that we don't have, but we're working progressively to, like I said, to mitigate, a lot of the contingencies we have, and we're all over the city in every area. And there are those areas that are very heavily populated with trees, and maybe some more so than others, right? But it's not that we not look in those areas. It's just systematically how we go through and try to, like I said, to mitigate, to lessen, the contingencies that are coming against the city. But not only that, but for the welfare of our citizens that are using these streets every single day.
Yeah, thank you for answer. But last, I want to leave a comment, because a couple of years ago, I worked with SF Public Works staff, and then we marking all the severely damaged sidewalk by tree. However, after that, I didn't see any improvement or any funding request. That's why I'm questioning, those spots. It's not regular spot. Near the organization, and then senior center near the school. So really seniors and kids, a lot of people, population use it. Right next to them, there's a severely damaged sidewalk from the tree. Last year we see a lot of lawsuit happen in San Francisco. City need to pay over $500,000 for those injuries. So I'm talking about anything you need some spot prioritize, especially near the senior center and in schools. And also that's near the bus stop too. So hopefully
Right.
you can prioritize those spots in the future and then request the funding so we can mitigate, those serious issues first. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Member Ford.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask a quick question about the curb ramps. I did a little math, and that is $38,000 per curb ramp and $200,000 per intersection. And I think these are pretty regular items. Is that the price we paid last year? How did it change? And is there any sort of special condition going on here? There's been a little chatter about curb ramp cost in public infrastructure, and I just wanted to dig into this one a little further. Thanks.
Okay, this is good. We have DPW staff also available, Anastasia Haddad, who's remote, who might be able to answer the question about the price.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello? Yes, hi, this is Anastasia Haddad, Public Works. I'm the project manager for the VO Rafting project. The estimate. I will say that, every location is slightly different and more complex. It's not a simple division where you can divide out, dollar per curb ramp. It's not quite that simple. Some locations, did require drainage. The core of this project is, of course, to deliver curb ramps, but drainage is also included as part of this project. So that also is factored in. So it's not as simple as saying, price per curb ramp. There are other factors that do make certain locations slightly more complex. We do have additional coordination for sub-sidewalk basements and Muni and OCS that do make certain locations, again, a little bit more expensive than others. So I'm not sure if that quite answered your question. If you want to follow
Okay, so
up
how
with
does
that.
so 38K compares favorably to the numbers of 50K in LA. Good job. How does it compare to where we were paying last year? Like what rate of inflation are we getting on this? And then is this an in-house construction project or did we bid it out?
So this project will be bid out, and prices compared to last year, I don't have that data with me, but is probably very comparable. Our prices do not increase drastically per year. There might be a slight, 3 to 5% increase.
So when I do projects at work, I'm asked to decrease the prices. Is there any effort to decrease the prices year over year?
I'm sorry, you're asking if there's an effort to decrease prices per year?
Yeah, I guess I'm just looking for the procurement process to get these 6 for actually 3% less than we paid last year, which would be consistent with what my boss is asking me to do on the projects I run.
I'm sorry, I'm not following your question. You want us to try to decrease prices 3%?
Well,
Is that the goal?
I mean, I don't necessarily believe that you're probably going to be the one who can control this. I guess I just want to read into the record that I think it should be possible that we get more efficient at installing things like curb ramps that are done in mass in this city and not less efficient over time.
Understood. Okay.
If I may add, this is Maria Lombardo, Chief Deputy for Public Works Benefit. If anyone missed, I just want to be clear that My understanding, and Rachel can correct me if this is wrong, is Public Works has done a lot of the easier ramps, the low hanging fruit, right? So what's left are the more expensive ones. Doesn't change your question, member for it, but I just wanted that clear for others.
Member Milford Rosales.
Thank you very much. I know many times we have comments when we're asking to do things better or for details about something that we don't totally understand. And I would like to say that I was on a bike and brew ride not too long ago that went through the exact area that we're seeing the planned build right now, over near McLaren Park, and I am very excited for that build. Not only is it great connecting the school to the playgrounds and everything, but I think it's also really good that it connects very well with the Mansell Promenade. I think it's always great when our projects to improve bike lanes and like safe separated spaces actually kind of connect to each other and build out a network instead of having weird disjoint things like we've seen in the past. One question I had was just, is that concrete, like, are those concrete barriers going between the two-way protected bike lane and the or two-way cycle track and the main traffic flow? I had a bit of a hard time telling on the pictures what the method of separation was.
I'm sorry, is your question regarding the VL Curb Ramp 19 project, or is there a specific location you're referring to?
Yes,
This Avenue.
so yeah, on Viz Valley, yeah, on Viz Valley.
Hello, great. Good evening, everyone, or afternoon. I don't know where we are. Thank you for your question. My name is Marian Koss. I work for Ecken Park, and I'm the project manager for that project. And I'm so excited that as a user, you're going to see the benefits of it. And yes, so our real estate is limited, right? Because we can only do the work within the road. And right now, it's a wide lanes going up and down. And you mentioned the school and how important it was, to be safe there. And I heard you also say that, safety in schools. So because of that, we have, let's say, working from the west side to the east side, we have 2 lanes that are protected going in each direction. And then we have 2 vehicle lanes. And at certain intervals going up and down visitation, we may have the bike lanes actually deviate from the road, and they work their way along the boundaries of the Glen Eagles golf course, and then and Reckon Park amenities, and hopefully to connect to Sunnydale, right? When you talk about the bigger plan and the master plan, that's something that would be coming in the future. We have no control over that. And then you have parking on either side of the vehicle lanes, down below where all, most of the amenities, Kaufman Pool and the playgrounds are. So to answer your question again, there will be those K-rails that are concrete barriers that protect bicycles from vehicles. In addition to, we have some speed tables. We worked very diligently with MTA to narrow the vehicle lanes, and also have it certain strategically with the crosswalks, have the ability to, have a resting place as you cross the street. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, that all sounds absolutely excellent. I look forward to this project being completed. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I have a question about the curb ramps. The enclosure said that the intersections are assigned priority based on the condition of existing curb ramps and the disability status of the requester. I was wondering if you all consider absence of curb ramp on one side of the intersection or another, and if you all have like an inventory of intersections that currently don't have curb ramps at both crosswalks.
Hi, this is Anya Haddad again. So for regarding curb ramps, yes, we do consider locations that do not have an existing curb ramp. That is a criteria that we do consider. And yes, we do have an inventory of all of our citywide curb ramp assets.
Okay, and is it a priority for the department to ensure that every crosswalk does have um a curb ramp at it? I'm always surprised when I am at a crosswalk that is lacking a curb ramp altogether at one end or another.
Yes, it is absolutely our department's priority to try and do ADA accessibility citywide. If you come across a corner that has not yet had curb ramp upgrades, it is definitely on our list, but you can imagine there's thousands of locations still that are in the queue for curb ramp construction.
Great. Well, I'm glad that we are funding improvements to a bunch of them then. And then is it 311 where we would report or request a curb ramp at a area where one is missing, or is there a different way to do that?
Yes, you can send your request through 311, or you can file a request through ODA, Office of Disability and Accessibility, and their request will be routed to Public Works.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions or comments from members, is there any public comment in the room on this item?
Your 2 minutes begins now. Oh, what?
Thank you. Thank you. Listening to this, these are kind of random comments, but when I was walking from the library this morning at 16th and Noe, the curb ramps are there. They have the yellow pads in and everything else. And I saw white lines marked around it with all types of configurations. So I'm just wondering, well, why is that ramp being replaced or planned to be replaced? Because it's being marked up. So I just thought it was kind of curious. Has nothing to do with this topic, but for something for the future. And also on the list is 183 Chattanooga. And this was on a listing before, and I took a look out there, and it just has basically a small nick that I consider a small nick. Maybe not. It may not be. It's not 100% perfect, but I'm just wondering. Are we spending this much money for exact perfection when everything else is falling apart? I mean, that's my takeaway that I look at it, and. Again, as I said, these are random comments and something that I'll be looking for. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Operator, is there any remote public comment on this item?
Yes,
Oh.
we have one remote public comment. Roland,
I'll come back to you.
go ahead.
Oh, just a moment, please.
Oh,
Okay, your 2 minutes begins now.
okay. Roland, can you unmute yourself? There we go.
Yeah, works a lot better when I get the unmute. I'm going to focus purely on the cost, okay? I went to Gemini and I asked a straight question. What is the cost of a curb ramp at the junction in San Jose? You can do the same thing, you will get the same answer. The answer is between $7.5K and $20K per ramp. If you've got a four-way junction, the cost is between $30,000 and $80,000 for the entire junction. And that is significant. And the only thing I can offer there, I don't understand why it should be that expensive in San Francisco, is that in San Jose, the way that this is done is through a large capital bid, for X millions of dollars, and then they just keep on delivering curb ramps as required. And I hope that helps because something seriously wrong in San Francisco. Thank you.
Thank you, Roland. There are no further public remote comments, but I did want to make one announcement. I left this in the chat. If any attending staff, if you could kindly turn on your video when you're responding to questions, if you're able to, thank you. That would be really helpful. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Member Margarita.
It's not venting. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I really appreciate it. I just wanted to follow up on some of the comments made by Mr. Edward Mason. If anybody can answer his questions, I would want to know those answers. And also with regards to how is it that certain ramps are chosen, which ones in the city? And I appreciate the answer with regards to residents calling 311 under the Office of Disability and Accessibility. Is that a continuous thing? Like, is it that it's going to be prioritized if somebody called last year? Are those the ones that are going to be prioritized? How is it that you choose which one's going to be prioritized? And is there an end to the requests if residents are calling 311 or ODA to ask for a curbside ramp to be fixed? I hope that makes sense. It was multiple questions in one. Thank you.
Hi, this is Anastasia Haddad, Public Works. So I can answer your questions regarding the curb ramps. So regarding requests, it's been our long-standing practice that any requests for curb ramps, they get submitted through our 311 system or through ODA, and then those requests would get submitted to the Public Works Curb Ramp Program for prioritization. How we prioritize our locations, like I mentioned, there are several criteria. We do look at the number of requests per location, the year of those locations, how long a constituent has been waiting to receive that curb ramp. We look at resources around those locations, proximity to hospitals, schools, other key resources. We do look at other projects that are in the vicinity to see if there's any partnering opportunities. There's proximity to transportation is another key one. So there are several criteria we do look at to kind of, select locations. Yes, there is a goal in sight. Public Works does have a backlog of several thousand locations to accomplish. And once all of those curb ramps are completed, then yes, requests would trickle down. We would essentially stop receiving requests once we build out all of those curb ramp locations. I believe I answered that question. You'll have to remind me of your other questions that you had.
Thank you for that answer. My follow-up question to that would be, is there a possibility that we can get a copy of the historical requests, if possible, just so that we can have an idea in general to answer, I guess, Edward Mason's question as, why are we fixing the one on 16th and Noe if it looks... Oh, 16th and Sanchez, thank you. If it looks good versus another one that needs to be fixed, right? I mean, if 100 residents call about one that doesn't necessarily need to be fixed, once your experts look at it, just because the residents are asking for it to be fixed, it doesn't necessarily need to be fixed, versus an area where residents aren't calling, possibly in District 9, which is a district I'm in, but does need to be fixed. Does that make sense? So if there's like, aside from phone calls that you're receiving or emails, etc., how else are you choosing these areas to be fixed? So if there's an area that needs to be fixed, obviously by your experts, that it's visual. If nobody's calling in, it's not going to be prioritized, if that makes sense. If you can answer that question, thank you. Or if there's other means for you all to look at that area to be fixed. Thank you.
Yes, so I think the location you mentioned, 16th and Sanchez, just to be clear, that's not part of my project. I have no curb ramp improvements myself planned. That's not part of my project that's being presented today. But in general, requests is how we choose prioritization, right? Our overall goal for the department is to build out every single curb ramp location. Of course, how we prioritize is based off requests from constituents, we give those locations of the highest priority, and then we work our way down there. So eventually, once we build out all the top priority locations with constituent requests, of course, we would get to locations that perhaps don't have any requests associated with them. So it's not to say just because no one files a 311 request that that curb ramp will never get built. That's not going to happen. Eventually, we want to build out every single location in San Francisco.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions or comments from members, may I have a motion and a second to approve item 6? Moved by member Milford Rosales, seconded by member Margarita. Madam Clerk, can we please get a roll call vote?
On the motion to approve item 6, member Bars. Bars absent. Member Baumgarten.
Baumgarten, aye.
Baumgarten, aye. Vice Chair Daniels. Daniels absent. Member Ford.
Ford, aye.
Ford, aye. Member Kim.
Kim, aye.
Kim, aye. Member Labaro. Labaro absent. Member Levine.
Levine, aye.
Levine, aye. Member Margarita.
Margarita, aye.
Margarita, aye. Member Milford Rosales.
Milford Rosales, aye.
Milford Rosales, aye. Member Ortega.
Ortega, aye.
Ortega, aye. Chair Siegel.
Siegel, aye.
Siegel, aye. There are 8 ayes. The motion is approved.
Great, thank you so much, and thanks again for the presentation. Moving to item 7, adopt a motion of support to approve the fiscal year 2026-2027 Transportation Fund for Clean Air Program of Projects. We're pleased to have Mike Pickford, Principal Transportation Planner, here to present this item.
Okay, I think that's on now. Where's my share thing? Here we go. Yeah. All right. So what is the Transportation Fund for Clean Air? We come to the CAC a couple of times a year with items related to this funding source. TFCA is a grant program for projects that reduce motor vehicle emissions beyond any current requirements to improve air quality. Revenue comes from a $4 surcharge on motor vehicle registrations in the Bay Area. 60% of the funds go directly to the Air District, which uses them for regional grant programs, including electric vehicles and chargers, as well as shuttle programs. And then 40% of TFCA funds are distributed to county level programs, with the Transportation Authority administering the program here in San Francisco. And then we program these funds through our annual call for projects, which is what we're talking about today. We also help sponsors pursue those regional funds. For this year, this year is very unusual because we have a significant increase in the amount of funds available versus previous years. Our TFCA 40% program amount that you see on the top row there is pretty typical of what we would expect for an annual TFCA program. But this year, the Air District has offered to pass through some of those regional TFCA funds that I mentioned to the counties, with about $1.6 million available to San Francisco. However, these funds are restricted, so they can only be used for bikeway or bike parking projects. There are a couple of other important restrictions, including that we can't combine these regional TFCA funds with our county funds. So that does add to the challenge of matching projects with funding sources. In terms of the amount available for projects, we had overall about $2.35 million. And this table also shows you that within that amount from the Air District, not only is it restricted to bikeways, but about $1 million is available for bike projects anywhere in San Francisco, but about $468,000 must be used in a special designated area in Southeast San Francisco, which you see on the map here. This area is identified as a high priority community through the State Community Air Protection Program established by Assembly Bill 617. Just so wanted to make sure we're clear on that. It's most of District 10 and a little bit of District 9 as well. getting back to this year's call for projects, as I mentioned, we had about $2.35 million available. And after netting out administration funds, we received 8 eligible applications. All the funds must be programmed to specific projects by November, or we risk losing them back to the Air District. To develop our recommendations for this competitive program, we first evaluated applications based on screening criteria required by the Air District. Most notably, all TFCA funds must fit the rules for an eligible project type and must meet a cost effectiveness threshold, which is set by the Air District. And you can see here those thresholds. The numbers in parentheses indicate that the Air District also offers a higher cost effectiveness threshold for these priority areas that you see defined below. So it is just another complication that we have to work through. So Air District policies do not include prioritization guidance, but our local expenditure criteria, which were approved by the board in February, instruct us to prioritize applications by looking at factors including emissions reduced, project readiness, and other factors that are important, as most TFCA projects are expected to be completed within 2 years. All right, so here, this table is our recommendations. We are recommending fully funding 7 projects and partially funding 1 project. I'll briefly describe each of these projects, and including touching on our conditions that you see with the asterisks there. So first up, bicycle corrals at daylit intersections. SFMTA would use TFCA funds to plan, coordinate, purchase, and install corrals with at least 370 bicycle parking spaces. These corrals and daylighting locations will have spaces for 4 to 6 bikes. However, there may be locations with more space available where they could install a larger corral. These corrals are a type of daylighting hardening and have a safety co-benefit of protecting the daylighting area from illegal parking and double parking. So they reinforce the benefits of daylighting. The locations will be prioritized by factors including whether the intersection's on the high injury network, on the bikeway network, and whether it's a commercial corridor has metered parking. Next up is SFMTA's regular short-term bike parking program that would plan, design, and install 316 bicycle parking racks, providing 632 parking spots. Locations for the racks are selected by request and proactively through SFMTA projects that are working on corridors or in equity priority communities. You can request a rack by going to the website down in the lower right corner of the slide there, sfmta.com/bike parking. We are recommending partial funding for this project, which does result in fewer racks than initially proposed, so that we can fund additional projects. This project is scalable. We have funded it for a number of years, and we don't anticipate that this recommendation will negatively affect SFMTA's ability to implement bike parking. This project will be eligible for, we anticipate, next year's call for projects, and so we don't think this will cause any issues. And overall, did want to mention that across all of our recommended projects, we are including about $550,000 for short-term bike parking. All right, next up, SFMTA's Bayview Community Shuttle Vans project would use TFCA funds to replace 3 gasoline-powered vehicles with newer zero emissions vehicles, similar to what you see on the screen, but electric. That would be for the Bayview Shuttle service. And those shuttles would be owned by SFMTA rather than contracted, as is currently the case. The Bayview Shuttle provides rides to and from Bayview Hunters Point 7 days a week. These rides serve as first and last mile connections, allowing members of the public and residents of the area to connect to public transit, employment centers, and health resources. Next, the Howard Streetscape project is a major infrastructure project that will redesign 7 blocks of Howard Street to improve safety and enhance mobility for SOMA, which has a high concentration of low-income residents who are dependent on transit, walking, and bicycling. The project will reduce vehicle lanes from 3 to 2 and will replace existing bicycle infrastructure with a 2-way bikeway, and it will install pedestrian and bicycle safety improvements, including raised crosswalks, bulb outs, protected intersections, traffic signals with bicycle phases, and new, more efficient pedestrian scale lighting. We are recommending a special condition on this on these funds that SFMTA must provide evidence of a full funding plan, or we may cancel the project and use these funds for next year's call for projects. Next up, this will look familiar. Rec Park's Visitation Avenue project is also seeking funding from our TFCA call for projects. This is the exact same project that you heard about in the previous item. So again, just wanted to emphasize the new bicycle mobility connections to the middle school, et cetera. And we're also recommending a similar condition, just that by February, this must have a full funding plan in place, which, that should all be resolved by July. Next up is another project from SFMTA that proposes to work with the school district and potentially other non-SFUSD schools to install parking in that AB 617 planning area that I showed you the map of. They would work with schools to identify interest for parking a minimum of 154 bikes, scooters, and skateboards. We are looking at this. Bicycle parking is obviously eligible for TFCA, and we are making the argument that students and school employees may use scooters and skateboards for similar trips instead of a car. We are, however, confirming the eligibility of those parking types with the Air District. So that's something that we, a condition that we're still working through. All right. And then next, the Treasure Island Bike Share Expansion Project from the Treasure Island Mobility Management Agency would add to the initial fleet of 30 bikes that was funded through TFCA last year, with 20 additional bikes, 2 new stations, 2 years of operations funding, and funds to electrify an anticipated 2 stations, which will decrease ongoing operating costs because the bikes can charge in place at the stations. The project directly responds to community feedback heard through the Treasure Island Supplemental Transportation Study, which emphasized the need for more sustainable and accessible transportation options. And again, we're recommending a condition here, just that monthly updates are provided on negotiations to amend the current contract with the bike share provider. Finally, Emergency Ride Home incentivizes commuters to use sustainable modes by providing a subsidized taxi ride home in case of a personal emergency, like a sick kid or a flat tire on your bike. We've supported this program for many years because it is very cost effective. The requested funds would support 12 months of program operations. And notably, this cycle, SFMTA is taking over management of the program from the Department of the Environment, which had previously run the program for a number of years. And with that, I can take any questions, and I'm thankful we have many project managers here as well.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Member Baumgarten.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you so much for that presentation. It's great. There's a lot of exciting projects on here. I have a couple of questions primarily focused around the daylighting and bike-related stuff. Firstly, I'm curious, is the goal to get eventually all intersections in the city daylighted?
Well, so there is a state law related to this that I believe does require that, but do we have someone from SFMTA who can respond to that directly from the agency's perspective?
And maybe let me make a quick clarification. To have them all daylighted with something other than just paint on the curb. Sorry.
Okay, yes, that is definitely an SFMTA question. I will say, yeah, I have not heard that is SFMTA's policy. And so, I think what you're seeing here is kind of an early attempt at figuring that question out. And so this is obviously for a limited number of locations.
Okay, cool. So quick follow, and then a follow-up to that. Similarly, so I know with typical bike parking, you can request racks. I'm curious for if you were to want like a bike parking corral at a daylight location, is that something that's available for the constituents to request?
So I will add, as part of the short-term bike parking request, it is not just single racks. you could request corrals, and that would feed into SFMTA's evaluation system. Actually, it does look like we've got Jason Hyde from SFMTA on the line. Jason, would you like to add anything about requesting corral locations?
Sure, yeah. Hi everyone, Jason Hyde. I'm a planner at the Livable Streets subdivision representing bike parking. Yes, Mike is correct. We also are expecting to have a separate website related to our Community Corners program, which will also feature an opportunity for folks to request bike corrals specifically. So we're hoping to get that live later this summer.
Awesome. Thank you. Sorry, I have a lot of hopefully quick follow-ups to this question, but with these in this plan, I'm curious if there's any like portion of funds included. I just didn't see it on this breakout in this chart. Are there any portion of funds included to like publicizing the ability of people to request? Like, will there be any like quote unquote like marketing or any initiatives on like Muni or the buses or stuff like that?
I don't think that's part of this project, but Jason, do you want to add anything about how SFMTA publicizes this opportunity?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. It's been a while since we have actively publicized the ability for folks to request a rack. I think that it's time that we do focus on some efforts. So I think that's a great idea. We don't necessarily have funding dedicated to that through this grant, but it's not to say that we don't have other funding opportunities that could fund something like that. So I think that's a great idea.
Awesome. Thank you. And then just kind of like commentary on that. I know I have gone to recently like neighborhood association meetings in Russian Hill and North Beach, and there's a lot of people who might not have been in the city for a very long time, but like a couple of years recently, and they're active commuters going to offices downtown. I think a lot of people, whether they're transplants or been here for a while and just don't know, like I don't know if there's as much visibility amongst like the younger corporate commuter community about this kind of thing. So, and from hearing like obviously different demographic than requests ramps on curbs, I still think there's an opportunity to get like more input and allow that to play more of a part. So that was just 2 cents. And then another bike related question. When we are talking about bike shares, is that referring to the Bay Wheels Lyft partnership? Okay.
Yes.
Cool. And excuse my ignorance if this was somewhere. I know we can request like bike infrastructure, but is there similarly a form available to the public to request bike share infrastructure?
I don't think it works quite so smoothly. I think there's a lot of negotiation about where bike share stations are situated. I'm not sure. Jason, do you want to speak on Adrian's behalf?
Yeah. I mean, you can certainly send an email to bikeshare@sfmta.com. We definitely welcome public input on potential locations.
Okay, cool. And I'm assuming that's some sort of public-private partnership with Lyft on determining that stuff. Okay.
Yes.
Cool. Thank you so much.
I saw a hand from Matt Lasky, but then it went down. So maybe.
Hey, yeah, this is Matt Lasky, Bike Program Manager, MTA. I think, with Bike Share, we try and get coverage throughout the city for stations, so it's a little more complicated. However, the e-bikes now, they have locking devices on them. So, yeah, there are opportunities to not just use stations, is my point.
Member Kim.
Thank you, Chair. I have just one question about AB 617 planning area. It says Southeast San Francisco is only area and SF identified as a high priority community. Could you explain the why? For me, somehow it's kind of new to me. So, if possible, could you explain educate me about this?
Sure. So AB 617 was a state law that passed to focus on areas that are disproportionately impacted by air quality. And the idea is to allow these communities to develop plans within them to improve the air quality and to provide some resources to help with that process. And so it's within the Bay Area Air District. They went through a process to select multiple areas around the Bay Area. So within San Francisco, the area that you saw on the map is the only area within our county that was selected. But there's also, I believe, an area in West Oakland and I think in Richmond. I'm not familiar with all of them, but it is just another process to go through to try to focus on areas that have these historic air quality issues.
So can I understand this area has comparably poor air quality other than other area?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
Okay, thank you.
Member Milford Rosales.
Hello. So I wanted to say I'm very excited for the Howard Streetscape project. I live in Soma. I bike and take buses and walk through Soma, and a lot of these streets are just way too large for the amount of traffic we see there outside of like 1 hour a day, maybe. I was a little confused about the thing of waiting for SFMTA to show funding is in place before actually committing funds. Could you both help explain to me what if we're voting on like a conditional funding allocation, and then also what the chances are of SFMTA getting their funds in order for this to happen?
So first of all, I think that Howard is a big priority of the city, including the Transportation Authority. This is far from the only funding that the Transportation Authority has proposed for the project. So for this fund source specifically, there is a important timely use of funds component to it. So I think this condition is more about if there's a delay, it might be more appropriate to use these funds for a project that can get going sooner. We are, hopeful that the project will get going, and I know SFMTA I think would be very confident that this will not be an issue. But it's there are some federal funds that are still a little bit in question, but I think that we're all very supportive of the project and will work to make sure it can move forward.
Yeah, if I may add to Mike's good answer, one of the policies with the sales tax is to make sure we have a fully funded project or a usable segment. So that's why we are pretty confident. We're very confident that this will happen, but we wanted to get it moving even though the other funds haven't been approved yet. That's why we have the condition.
So this is kind of like us having everything ready ahead of time so that if something happens, we can pivot, and if everything goes according to plan, we don't delay anything.
Yeah, and it could be as simple as if there is a delay or something, maybe this year's funds can be used for something else that can go faster, and maybe it gets funded in a future cycle.
All right, nice. Thank you very much for clarifying that for me.
Member Margarita.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation. I really appreciate it. I just have a couple questions. One of them being, I'm just wondering, why is it just restricted funds for bikes? Number one. And number two, I'm interested in the AB 617 planning area, which affects D9 and D10, which I'm excited about. But in looking at that map, if you can explain what that means, all those red lines, what does it mean? And I'm excited about it, though. I just wanted more of an explanation. Thank you.
The first part of that I think is probably a little bit easier. So just these pass-through funds, the Air District uses that 60% of the TFCA funds to fund a number of programs, and they have historically, tried to make them pretty simple programs that are kind of first come, first served. So they have for instance, a vehicle charger project, and they set some eligibility requirements. And if you meet those requirements and tell them where the charger is, you basically get a rubber stamp that your project can move forward. And I think with bike projects,
Mañana, bebé. Hoy era Sam. Hoy es.
I
Mañana
think
es.
somebody is not unmuted.
Gaby, sí.
Sorry. So I think they found with bike projects that they're often a lot more complex and individual, and they have had a lot of projects that were funded through those regional funds that weren't able to move forward. And so, so this is an attempt from the Air District to try something new and see, well, if we have had bad luck getting these projects working, maybe the counties, maybe by passing funds through to the counties can actually get these projects out on the ground and see some projects built. So I think it's just trying something new from the Air District's perspective. And then your other question about the specific boundaries of the AB 617 area, I'm sorry, I don't know specifically how they drew that line, why they chose those boundaries, but the whole point of this program has been to work really closely with the community and really have it be a community-led process to develop a plan to improve the air quality in the area. So I do know that that's been a major focus of the work in that area.
Thank you for that. So is it that area is going to be looked at to add more like bike ramps in that area, or like in looking at that area, since it's, quote unquote redlined per se, what is it that would be invested in that area?
I see. Yeah. So the state law that designated, that led to the process to designate this area is specifically about air quality and improving air quality. So this is the Air District has told us that this is the area that they want us to focus these funds in. So it's really the Air District is basically providing additional funds and additional planning resources to work in this area. It's not something that the Transportation Authority has specifically focused on. It's all through this air quality planning process. But the idea is to.
I can probably help you out here. Sorry, it's like this is the tricky question, so we're learning about it. Is for the money Mike is talking about, the Air District said some of it has to go here, and it can only be bikeways, bike parking. The Air District has other pots of money, which is I probably cut you off, Mike. Sorry. And sometimes in those other pots of money, Member Venecia, they give priority to this area because it has worse air quality.
But we don't necessarily know how that money is going to be utilized. It's just that area is going to be designated for that money to be used, but we don't know how.
Oh, we do learn, so Mike described the proposal for TFCA. When the Air District does other calls, they will come forward with specific projects that will go into the community. So they are known and the Air District committees approve them.
Exactly.
Got it. So then there's going to be meetings with the community to try and see their input?
Very, very much so. But they are led by the Air District, less so the Transportation Authority.
Okay. I appreciate the answer. Thank you so much. And then my last question is just to make sure, for example, come on, I'm sorry. And one of the last ones, just so that I could spread the word. Okay. For the school parking, oh no, wait, no, that's not one. That's not it. The emergency ride home, the 74,000, et cetera. Does that also include not just bicycles, but scooters or whatever have you? If you get, I see parents with their kids taking them to school in a scooter. So if they get a flat, they also can take advantage of this program?
I think this is actually an interesting time to be asking questions like that, because SFMTA is taking over management of the program. But the intention is that if you take a zero emissions mode, then yeah, you'd be eligible. I think, is Paul Bignardi on the line? Oh, in person. Would you like to respond to that question? Okay, yeah, I don't want to speak on SFMTA's behalf, but I do think that makes a lot of sense.
And so then piggybacking on one of the other members that asked the question, how would they access the assistance? Would it be calling 311 as an example, or how, if they get a flat suddenly, how can they benefit from the emergency ride home program?
So I'm not sure if SFMTA has a website up and running just yet, but do you want to maybe talk about how you're planning to roll out the service under SFMTA?
Hi, Paul Bignardi, SFMTA. We're still in the process of taking it over from SF Environment, but my understanding of the project is when someone who's eligible and has an emergency of the type that's covered, not all emergencies are covered, they basically get an alternative mode to go home. It's most commonly taxi, to be honest. And they actually have to pay for it up front. And then they actually go through a process to get reimbursed. And so we actually make sure that it's not we'll call it, it's a valid request. And we make sure that it's not something that came through that someone just filled out a form and sent it to us. So there were standards that have to be followed. And then they actually are sent back reimbursement for the cost they incurred to get that ride home.
But I think we will hear more as SFMTA works on it, and we can make sure to send you any information and the rest of the CAC to help publicize it, because I think we'd appreciate that help.
Thank you for the answer. And if just thinking of equity, right, and outreach to all residents in the community, and thinking of District 9 in particular residents, if you can think outside of the box in ensuring that all residents are able to benefit from the project, because I know a lot of residents are very humble and they're not going to try to submit receipts or whatever have you. So if you can think outside of the box or reach out to community to what would be the best way to incorporate all members of community to be able to benefit from that program. Thank you.
Thanks for the presentation. I am also extremely excited about the Howard Streetscape project. I actually had a truck roll over my bike trailer last month, which was pretty scary because they got impatient and like encroached into the unprotected bike lane. So I'm super excited about that. I was wondering, the $58 million overall price tag of the project is a bit intimidating. Is that for 7 blocks? Is that how much it costs to do a nice streetscape project like this? Or is there something special about this project that makes it so expensive?
I think there's lots of special things about it, but maybe someone from SFMTA, Matt, would you be a good person to respond to this?
Sure. Matt Lasky again, SFMTA Bike Program Manager. So yeah, Howard has a lot going on, the streetscape project. There's work below the ground, in terms of utilities, and then above ground, there's paving, the bikeway, landscaping, other pedestrian elements, signals. Numerous signals are being, basically along the whole corridor, are being upgraded to our modern standards and facilitate the two-way bicycle traffic, the two-way bikeway. So it's a lot of work. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm excited to see it get implemented. If there are no other questions or comments from members, is there any public comment in the room on this item? Not seeing any. Operator, is there any remote public comment on this item?
Yes, we have one remote public comment. Roland, go ahead. You can unmute yourself.
Yeah. Thank you. So wonderful process, and it's amazing what you can do with TFCA. I've got a very quick comment, is that I just Googled it, and TFCA stands for Transportation for Clean Air. that electric vehicles are paying the $4 charge just like normal vehicles. So I just bring that to your attention because that looks a bit strange. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And there is no further remote public comment for this item.
Great. May I have a motion and a second to, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, Member Margarita? Yeah.
I'm so sorry, Chair. I keep on doing this. I'll try not to do this anymore. It's just that my mind is going. When you were answering the previous question, it just hit me. When reaching out to the community, do you all have a list of the different community-based organizations that you will be working with to try and ask for input from District 9 and District 10? And if you do, is it possible to share it with our board?
So just to clarify, it will be the sponsor agencies will be the ones that would be doing that kind of work for each of these projects. So do you have a specific one of the projects in mind?
The project specific to District 9 and District 10.
Okay, we can follow up and get you more information on that.
Great, thank you. Sorry, board, and I will try not to do that again for the next one.
All good. Is there, may I have a motion and a second to approve item 7? Moved by Member Margarita, seconded by Member Baumgarten. Madam Clerk, could we please get a roll call vote?
On the motion to approve item 7, Member Bars absent. Member Baumgarten?
Baumgarten, aye.
Baumgarten, aye. Vice Chair Daniels absent. Member Ford?
Ford, aye.
Ford, aye. Member Kim?
Kim, aye.
Kim, aye. Member Laboro absent. Member Levine?
Levine, aye.
Levine, aye. Member Margarita?
Margarita, aye.
Margarita, aye. Member Milford Rosales?
Milford Rosales, aye.
Milford Rosales, aye. Member Ortega?
Ortega, aye.
Ortega, aye. Chair Siegel?
Siegel, aye.
Siegel, aye. There are 8 ayes. The motion is approved.
Great, thank you. Move to item 8. Adopt a motion of support to amend the Prop K standard grant agreements for the Visitation Valley and Portola Community-Based Transportation Plan implementation. And we have Rachel Seberg back to present this item.
Hi again. Okay, I'll get right into it. One sec. All right. So back in 2023, the Transportation Authority Board allocated Prop K neighborhood program funds to SFMTA to implement recommendations from the Visitation Valley and Portola CBTP, which the SFMTA board adopted in March of 2023. The board placed the subject $435,000 on reserve pending SFMTA board's adoption of the CBTP and SFMTA's submittal of an allocation request with project details. SFMTA has requested release of the implementation funds and amendment of the Prop K grant agreement to reflect the scope, schedule, cost, and budget for the CBTP recommendations to be constructed. SFMTA conducted the study to improve physical mobility in the project area by focusing on meeting the needs of existing residents and businesses. SFMTA recommended infrastructure projects prioritized and ranked for Visitation Valley and Portola separately, and policy recommendations for non-infrastructure needs identified by the community. The CBTP recommended both near-term quick build and longer-term improvements that are specific to the study areas. The focus on today's action is funding design and implementation of the recommended improvements within District 10, which are summarized on this next slide. The requested funds are, again, to design and construct quick build improvements within District 10. In your packet is a list of locations and a description of the quick build recommendations that will be implemented with the requested funds. The project will improve visibility of pedestrians crossing the street, expand bike connectivity with new facilities, and continue engagement with the Visitation Valley neighborhood to be responsive and accountable for delivering on community identified priorities. So to recap, the item before you today is to amend the relevant Prop K grant agreement to update the scope, schedule, cost, and funding plan, and to release $435,000 on reserve to implement quick build recommendations from the CBTP within District 10. In the future, SFMTA will request the remaining $750,000 in sales tax funds programmed for implementation of additional CBTP recommendations. And with that, I can take questions. We also have the project manager available for questions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for the presentation. Are there any questions or comments on this item from members? If there are not, Member Margarita, yeah.
I thought there were going to be other questions, but I guess not. Is that the only allotted amount for this project, $435,000, or was there previous money allocated for this project? Or is that it? And I heard you say that in the future, there's going to be $750,000 of an ask. But I'm just wondering. Thank you.
Yeah, that's the funds we have available is $435,000. And then there's also the 750 you're referring to is already programmed and in a placeholder, so ready to be allocated.
And do you think that's going to be enough, or in the future you might come back and say, actually, we might need more money?
That's an SFMTA question. We have Jean Long, the project manager, available remotely, I believe.
Yes. Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Jean Long. I am a transportation planner at SFMTA and the project manager for the Viz Valley and Portola CBTP implementation. So yes, what Rachel said is correct. We do have, again, the scope of work determined for that 435K pot of money that you'll make a determination today. And we are also planning to do a allocation request form for the additional 750K in for a couple more scope items, but there are specific items such as pedestrian bulb outs that will cost a bit more money, and we're looking into other grant opportunities to fund that specific scope. Fortunately, we've identified grant opportunities through MTC that are specifically for CBTPs, so we hope to procure that sometime in the future. But for the immediate near term, in the next couple of years, we have 435K as well as that 750K that the TA has already identified for additional CBTP implementation.
Okay, thank you. I'm just glad to see this area being invested in. So thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Member Milford Rosales.
Hello. So I just wanted to ask some questions about kind of clarification with network effects of bike lanes. So our previous project for the cycle track and then multi-use path in Viz Valley we talked about is going to go along Visitation Avenue, kind of towards the Herds Community Center playground. It looked like it went around the backside of the baseball diamond and kind of ended there. And looking at this project in the Visitation Valley projects, there is a plan for a new bikeway along Sunnydale that the northwestern extent of that gets to about Sunnydale and Hahn Street. Is there going to be a plan? I'll admit I'm not as familiar with a lot of the construction going on around the community and recreation centers and like I know the libraries there. Is there a plan to connect that multi-use path towards that intersection in some way, or to have like sidewalk park space that people can walk their bikes through? Because that seems like a very close near connection between the two projects. Yeah. And I know we've seen like things like with Valencia Street that has the misconnection at the south end still. Like we have projects that get completed that don't fully connect into the network, and as unpleasant as it can be to ride along Sunnydale, doing a few blocks of bikeway that aren't connected to something on either end doesn't fix the overall problem of biking there.
I'd be happy to answer that question. So what is currently in the scope for this 435K tonight? We are reflecting what is in the CBTP, since there was an outreach process that determined those segments on Sunnydale and San Bruno Avenue as the community supported recommendations. We're pursuing that first. But as we said, this money is for detailed design and construction. So that means our engineers, our planners will be looking at opportunities to build up those bike facilities in more detail, really analyzing the options before us. So what we have, we're using the recommendation as a starting point, but it doesn't mean that we're married to that specific scope. And we can look at opportunities to tie into the existing bike network because that is one of our ultimate goals. But for now, we are starting with those two segments since they were identified specifically in the plan.
So to clarify, the two segments that were identified in the plan along, and I'm looking at the Visitation Valley projects, there's a segment along Sunnydale for like 5 blocks. And then there's another one kind of down near the T that's just like a totally separate thing that I have not looked at that one as much. The plan is to go forward right now with building those two out, but remain flexible at potentially making a connection sometime later.
Yeah, I would say that's the plan. I also have my colleague Matt Lasky with us. We'll be working together on the implementation of those bike lanes. But as a starting point, we want to honor the recommendation that was in the CPTP, but going through that detailed design process, we'll kind of see what opportunities emerge to really expand and enhance the existing network.
All right, thank you very much for your clarification. I would really appreciate some kind of commitment here to trying to connect those facilities, particularly the Sunnydale one that's so close to being connected. But thank you very much.
Again, we're trying to honor what was recommended in the CPTP first. That's the segment that was identified, and then as we're going through that process, I will be looking for those opportunities to connect to the larger network, if feasible within that kind of budget that we have. Okay. Anything else?
No, that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Member Margarita.
Thank you, Chair. In looking at the map, initially I was thinking it was going to be on San Bruno, but I see it goes down Woolsey, and then when it becomes a T, it's a right on the street behind San Bruno. Is that correct? Or what street is it that you're looking at? Or am I reading this wrong? I'm just trying to figure it out visually.
Yeah, give me a second. I have a single screen right now, so I don't have all my windows open, but I can double check for you. Give me 1 second.
If I may, through the chair, while she checks too. Sorry, member Margarita, your question about additional funding for this. Our policy team, member Crabb and Martin Reyes, remind me that the TA has some money from MTC, $2.9 million that will be available mostly for design and implementation of projects coming from community-based transportation plans. So this and other ones that have been done in the city can compete for that funding.
Yes, that's actually the pot of money that I was referring to, the MTC CARE grant. We haven't worked on that yet, but that has been identified by the TA as another source for us to tap into to complete the Viz Valley and Portola CBTP implementation.
Thank you for that.
It does look to me like it is San Bruno on that map in the presentation, that the bike lane continues on for at least a portion of it.
Going towards the
kind of
right.
a small map.
Yeah, it's going towards the right, but then if you go towards the left, it appears that it's, I don't know if
So from
Gerard, is that going to be on Gerard?
zooming in, it just hops a block off once the gradient of the hill is gets low enough that you can hop a block off. So that, I don't know, I've ridden that route a few times, and that's what they're doing, I think.
So
we can follow up.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yes, I'm looking at the same map, and I see it's San Bruno from Arleta to closer to Mansell, and again, we're going to do that detailed design and looking through the appropriate facilities for those bike lanes, and of course, detailed design. It's been a couple of years since we've done outreach with the community, and there will be a component to make sure that we conduct appropriate outreach for the area to inform people of a potential bike lane.
Okay, thank you so much. And then similar to the previous presentation, if you can inform us the different organizations that you're going to reach out to. I super appreciate it for both District 9 and District 10, since those are the districts that are being affected by this. Thank you.
Yeah, and we are starting with District 10 first because that 435,000 is dedicated to supervisor to the District 10 office or to the District 10 neighborhoods, and we're starting with Viz Valley first. And then we've already gotten in touch with Supervisor Walton's office about key stakeholders in that area for us to do conduct outreach. So we're already starting to think through stakeholders who would be interested in this upcoming CBTP implementation.
Thank you so much.
Is there any public comment in the room on this item? Not seeing any. Is there any remote public comment on this item?
Oh, we have one hand, but that's I think by mistake. No remote. That's the clerk. No, sorry. No, no remote public comment on this item.
Great, thank you. May I have a motion and a second to approve item 8? Moved by member Margarita, seconded by member Milford Rosales. Madam Clerk, can we please get a roll call vote?
On the motion to approve item 8, member Bars.
Bars, aye.
Bars, aye. Member Baumgarten.
Baumgarten, aye.
Baumgarten, aye. Vice Chair Daniels. Daniels absent. Member Ford.
Ford, aye.
Ford, aye. Member Kim.
Kim, I.
Kim, aye. Member Labaro. Labaro absent. Member Levine.
Levine, aye.
Levine, aye. Member Margarita.
Margarita, aye.
Margarita, aye. Member Milford Rosales.
Milford Rosales, aye.
Milford Rosales, aye. Member Ortega.
Ortega, aye.
Ortega, aye. Chair Siegel.
Siegel, aye.
Siegel, aye. There are 9 ayes. The motion is approved.
Great, thanks again for the presentation. We'll move on to item 9, adopt a motion of support to adopt the Laguna Honda Gondola Feasibility Study final report. And we have Rail Program Principal Engineer Ahmed Thalaji here to present this item. Welcome, Mr. Thalaji.
Good evening, Chair Siegel and CSE members. I'm Ahmed Thalaji, Rail Principal Engineer with the Transportation Authority. Today, we're presenting the finding of the Laguna Honda Gondola Feasibility Study as requested by District 7 Commissioner Chair Malgar. The objective of this study is to assess if an aerial gondola is technically and financially viable solution to improve connectivity between the Forest Hill Muni Station and Laguna Honda Hospital. We also evaluated the existing shuttle as an alternative. The study followed a structured planning level methodology, starting with the data collection, existing condition analysis, opportunity and constraints mapping, demand forecasting, alignment alternatives, evaluation, planning level cost estimation, and a shuttle comparative analysis. The site presents a real access challenge. The hospital is separated from the station by Laguna Honda Boulevard, a heavily trafficked 4 lanes major roadway, and steep topography that makes walking difficult for many users. The station is served by 3 Muni lines and 4 bus routes, making it a busy transit hub or connection. A weekday shuttle already operates between the station and the hospital. 2 operators, Transmetro in the morning and the hospital's own shuttle midday through evening. The shuttle runs approximately every 15 to 20 minutes, serving both hospital buildings. For the alignment approach, we evaluated 6 alignments alternatives. Key constraints include PG&E high voltage lines, obstructions along Laguna Honda Boulevard, a grove of mature trees, limited space near the landmark station building, and the challenge of crossing a major roadway. The most feasible alignment that is recommended in this feasibility study launches from the east side of the Laguna Honda Boulevard within the hospital property and lands directly at the pavilion building, avoiding utility conflicts, dense trees, and landmarked station impacts. For context, urban gondola systems have been successfully deployed in cities like Portland and Mexico City. The Portland aerial tram is the closest example of such a system in North America, connecting a medical facility to a transit over 500-foot vertical rise. Locally, this Laguna Honda gondola would be slightly shorter distance and with a lower demand application. The cost estimate is built from three components: the ropeway supplier's cable system and structure, civil work including platform and path of travel improvements, and soft costs for design, permitting, and project management. In addition, there is an operation and maintenance cost that varies by suppliers. Based on quotes from suppliers, the estimated total gondola cost is approximately $22 million in year of expenditure dollars. That is a capital plus soft cost with an average annual operation and maintenance of approximately $1.3 million. The gondola offers better frequency, 5-minute cycle versus 15 to 20 minutes, and a greater capacity. However, the shuttle provides door-to-door service to both hospital buildings. Roughly a cost comparison, the gondola is approximately 7 times more costly than the shuttle. The shuttle also retains sufficient capacity and with improvements to serve the projected demand growth. Findings and conclusion: the study confirms that a gondola is technically feasible and could provide a fully accessible grade-separated connection. However, given the short alignment distance, modest projected ridership, and significant cost premium, the study team recommended enhancing the existing shuttle paired with transportation demand management strategies that should be sufficient to serve the future growth. This gondola feasibility study documented some design parameters, findings, and costs that can inform future gondola planning elsewhere in the city as applicable. And with that, I want to thank you all, and we're happy to take any questions. We have project managers who helped in this study as well. So thank you.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Member Ortega.
Hello. Thank you for the presentation. I think I can speak for everyone when I think a gondola sounds really cool, but I understand the impracticalities of it. But I think my actual question is, you mentioned the cost of the shuttle, and I have to say, like 15 to 20 minute service is like on my list of pet peeves about transit and SF in general, which is like 20 minutes is too long generally, and especially when people are trying to get to the hospital with appointments and other things. Like, I think that we should be looking at it based on this cost, like what is the actual cost of doubling the service? Like, is it just double the budget? Is it, I think you had written, sorry, you had it written down. Is it just doubling the total cost, which is like $300,000 a year? Is it saying it's $600,000 a year? Or is there any cost savings if we increase the service frequency? And I think like my other question is, wow, these new mics are very sensitive. Is there any, the shuttles are currently either a private contractor or are run by the hospital. Is there any thought or understanding of what a Muni operated service would look like in comparison to these two? Because also the hours are terrible. Thanks.
I'm going to defer this question to Jean Paul, who helped with the shuttle alternatives. So maybe, John, if you could speak to the improvements of this frequency of 15 to 20 minute cycle.
Good evening, everyone. Yeah, the existing shuttles just run on an ongoing cycle. There's just one vehicle doing a loop. So if we want to shorten the frequency, we need to add a new shuttle. Yeah, so kind of roughly, the math would be, yeah, basically doubling the annual costs, the annual operating costs. There used to be a shuttle run by SFMTA before. Oh, something happened with my camera. Sorry. Is that better? No. Uh, all right, yeah, there used to be an SFMTA shuttle run before, and I think this, I'm not sure the whole history, but this new system where we have a privately run shuttle and then operating for a period of time and then under contract with DPH and then one run by the hospital was the kind of follow-up solution. So yeah, I think we should, I mean, we would need to inquire with SFMTA what happened there, whether they have considered providing this service in a future again.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Thank you. Yeah. I guess like honestly, I feel like I understand that the study wasn't about what it would take, so I want to be very clear about that. Uh, but I feel like it should be like this. There's clearly some type of ask or demand that like frequency to the hospital get increased. And so I feel like that needs to be a very strong recommendation, which is that you should use the cost savings from building a gondola if that's what people are wanting and like invest that into the infrastructure. Like you're saying that it's a $20 million capital cost and it's approximately $600,000 to $2 million a year in operating and mobility costs for the same hours. And based on that math, it's $600,000 to run two shuttles. I feel like that's an interesting question, and I would have liked to have seen that dug into a little bit more to actually reach the same level of service. I feel like I understand why the comparison wasn't done, that you have like the existing thing, which should be your benchmark. But like you're saying that it's 5-minute service, and now we currently have 20-minute service. That is 4 times as much service. Therefore, the cost, yes, is higher, but what does 4 times as much service look like for the shuttle service as well? Like that isn't here. I can do that math, but the fact that that isn't written to me is a little bit of an oversight because I feel like it isn't quite an apples to apples comparison when you're talking about the feasibility of the study. And so if the answer is that we have to pay another $300,000 to have a shuttle running every 10 minutes, which is still half the amount of capacity, okay, that's fine, but I feel like that's a better comparison. So that's just something that I wish was in this report.
You know, there was 2023, there was another study that was done for the hospital specifically for the new employees at DPH coming in, the growth of I guess the new buildings of the hospital in the future, and it was a TDM study focused just on the the ridership and one of the potential was the add-in frequency of the shuttle. This study started technically really looking at the gondola with something to fall into, which was well, there is a shuttle. So how can we utilize that if the gondola is really, really expensive?
Yeah.
So you are correct. It was not an apple to apple comparison. It's a shuttle versus a gondola. I mean, the capital costs and just even technicalities, they're a little different.
Mm-hmm.
But I would just want to let you know there was
Yeah.
a study focused on.
Yeah, thank you. And I guess like the other thing is like for future things, more of a comment. I haven't been to this hospital, so I don't know, but I find it odd that the hours for this shuttle service only go till 6 p.m. I'm sure that there are people there at the hospital that are there later than 6 p.m. who would probably appreciate having this service. So I feel like that's the other thing is like the gondola hours versus the shuttle hours. It's like it only goes till 6 p.m. And I've never heard of a hospital closing exactly on 6 at the dot, especially considering you have staff that's working there. And so again, maybe this is sort of like trying to shoot a gift horse in the mouth. Like it's like the service is there at all, which is probably good. But I feel like, again, it's this thing where I understand that this was a very specific ask for a very specific thing. But I feel like when we talk about this problem, there should also be some acknowledgement and conclusion about like, what do all of the, like, let's say I have a doctor's appointment at 5:30 because I, am a working person and I end up having to go to this hospital. I guess I'm driving because there's no shuttle for me if the doctor's appointment goes longer than 30 minutes. It, I just feel like it's like there's this shuttle that seems kind of terrible, and someone was like, a gondola could be a great way to fix it. That feels like how it came out. And, I get it. I just rode a bunch of gondolas in Switzerland. It was awesome. 10 out of 10 would recommend. But I feel like it's like this just tells me that the current service is terrible, and that's why they're asking. So like that's not the study, but I wish that there was more that could highlight like, yeah, this is why it was asked. But like I said, I really respect that this was not the scope of the study, and I don't want it to. I understand there's a thing called scope creep. You didn't have that, so I want to be very clear. I respect that. I feel like this is highlighting, I think, a bigger issue that should probably be studied at a more holistic capacity.
If I may, good evening, Chair Siegel, Vice Chair Daniels, in case she's remote, CEC members, Carl Holmes, Deputy Director, Capital Projects. And so, Member Ortega, we wholeheartedly feel your feedback. In fact, that was some of the struggles that we had as well. When we started this study, we did not even know that there was a shuttle in operation. We knew there was a shuttle that used to be in operation by MTA. And upon going to the site, saw a shuttle and we were asking, what is this? Who's operating that? So, and there was also a struggle in terms of getting information about the shuttle. So imagine a city county department asking questions about the shuttle. It almost came across like we were an auditor and that our questions might cause the shuttle to no longer be in existence. So there was some reluctance to even be given visibility on the shuttle. So there were some challenges that we had. And so, but once we learned that there was a shuttle that was actually in operation, we couldn't ignore that and only do the gondola. Now, when we started the gondola study, we did say that we had a caveat, which was if, in fact, the gondola would turn out to not be, cost effective, could we propose maybe a shuttle, maybe revisiting a shuttle? It just so happened that we found out that it was there. And so I think what part of our findings are that we want to lift up and enhance the shuttle service. So everything you're bringing up, yes, we agree. It's just, yes, the scope creep was an item and the limited budget we had to even do this. But yes, we wholeheartedly agree with you. It's just, we wish that when we started the study that all the information from the shuttle was so easy to obtain, but that was a struggle. We got enough to be able to proceed with the study, but that was just a challenge that we had to deal with.
Thank you. Member Kim.
Thank you, Chair. So, we adopt this feasibility study, so which is technically feasible. However, this report conclusion says it does not recommend further study of gondola concept for the Laguna Honda site. That's the conclusion. We adopt this conclusion from this report, right?
That's correct. We think for the distance and for the price, 10th of a mile for a cost of 22 million, it's a little hefty.
Yeah, thank you. If, as Director Carl Holmes mentions, even before study, you have enough information, it would be better. But hopefully, this study result can use for future use. Yeah. Thank you.
Member Levine.
Thanks for the presentation. Just curious, at what point would the gondola be at the highest point off the ground? And I have
I'm gonna lean on Vanessa Pierce, one of our technical engineers, helping me with this. I do have a number, but she will be saying the accurate one.
At most, it'll be 55 feet above the ground. And the reason it has to go so high is because as it climbs above the roadways, there's a roadway in front of the hospital building, it needs to clear the pedestrian paths and the roadways. So they're minimum height envelopes. So it climbs pretty steeply initially up to a maximum height of 55 above ground level. And then it goes kind of straight for quite a long time and then slants down at a much kind of less steep angle because you're much higher at that point at the top of the hospital.
The reason I ask that question is it seems to me that there might be a substantial number of people, patients at the hospital who might have an aversion to heights and to riding a gondola. And if this is the only option they have available to them, I think it could create some serious issues. I'm just wondering whether the population that's there now were ever interviewed to see whether that would be an option that they'd like to see.
We worked closely with the hospital staff in determining the footprint and all that. We did not go into that level of details to figure out how would you feel if you would ride the gondola at that point when we arrived at the price and some of the challenges. We just called it a study at that point because we know it's not gonna be recommended at this exact site. So.
It just seems to me that if that's the only option available, if it were to be built and people had an aversion to riding it, it would be a real problem. That's all. Thank you.
Member Margarita.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate the outcome and the study and everything. And the recommendation. I'm just wondering, how much did it cost to complete the study? I was trying to look through everything just to complete the study. Obviously not to follow through with the shuttle, but just to complete the study. And how long did it take?
This costs about $170,000 and it lasted about a little over a year.
Thank you. And just to add, as a previous social worker, I've been to Laguna Honda and I never saw the shuttle. I've been there several times between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. and unfortunately also 7 p.m., 8 p.m., 9 p.m., and 10 p.m. And I would have loved to see the shuttle. Okay, thank you.
Member Baumgarten.
Yeah, thank you for all this. At least one, maybe two questions. The first question is, with this initiative, and maybe this is more a question for you, Chair. The motion today is to adopt this feasibility study final report. What is that committing to any follow-up action or allocation of funds, or is this just to formally recognize the study results?
The study conclusion was to, look into enhancing the existing shuttle, plus paired with more transportation demand management strategies. Some of them were highlighted in the 2023, I think, Fair and Peer report. But we also, something we could be looked at to, and if the issue is, getting from the station to the hospital, then I think looking at more ways of enhancing the shuttle probably is a lot cheaper than the gondola system.
Okay. So if we were to vote aye, that is just a recognition that we're adopting the formal findings of the study. Okay.
Right. So we support the recommendations of the study.
Got it. Thank you for clarifying. That's all.
Member Ford?
Just thanks to my colleagues, most of my questions you guys already asked. This was a study requested by Melgar, is that right? And then we probably just approved the money for the study pretty easily. And that it seems like partly because there isn't really any way for us to allocate the money somewhere else, like to 1/3 more shuttle service. And I guess I'm wondering, I just Googled the Portland aerial tram. A quick review of that Wikipedia page will tell you that this is an infeasible idea. Like, I just am feeling a little disappointed that we spent the $170K on the study and not on this shuttle service. And I'm wondering if there's any lessons or changes to how we evaluate that question in front of the CAC to prevent more fabulous sort of ideas from consuming our resources. Maybe we do want to study funicular replacement for the cable car, but yeah, and more of a comment and also just like how does this committee assert influence other than we now all know this information?
So yes, this study was requested strongly by Chair Melgar, and yes, it is easy to expect the outcome that we had, but we also said that we would entertain an alternative such as a shuttle, so that we didn't end up with a report or a study that says, sorry, no go, there's nothing that we can do. Again, we didn't know there was an existing shuttle that was in operation. And as Member Margarita stated, when she went out there, she didn't see it. But when we went out there, we did see it, and I showed her photos. So it's just, a lesson learned. It's easy to say, well, we should have asked, is there a shuttle? But the fact that once we spotted the shuttle, we weren't able to get information readily. So we also knew that there was a likelihood that the outcome would be what it is. And so we also were hoping to come up with maybe that this could be feasible somewhere else in the city. And so that's what Ahmed was referring to with regards to the distance. We don't have a number, but it's just something, when you're talking about 1/10 of a mile versus maybe 3,000 feet, which is, 0.6 of a mile roughly, maybe, and that's what's in Portland. Maybe that would make it more feasible. I don't know, but so we wanted to do something because of the request so that we didn't end up with work or effort done with nothing positive. And when we did bring this to the CAC emphatically and enthusiastically supported it. So I understand the comment and suggestion about how do we make it better going forward. And there was discussion about this possibility before we started the effort, but we needed to still comply with the request. And this isn't the first time that we complied with the request from a commissioner and had to bring it to the CAC. So I don't know if that fully answered your question, Member Ford, but we knew even coming tonight that there was that possibility that someone might ask, hey, really? This is how much money did it take to get to that answer? But that's why we also put time into that existing shuttle with the idea that maybe we could lift that up and advocate for, enhanced shuttle service, so that at least something comes out of it in the end.
Member Bars?
So in defense of the gondola, no, I appreciate your concern, Member Ford. I feel, I mean, we've been talking a lot about the expense of the capital investment, and I'm thinking of two things. One, this is serving a hospital where there's people who have significant mobility challenges, and I can see why Chair Melgar would have thought that something other than like a van-based shuttle might be the right technical solution for the problem. And like the $20 million capital cost is significant, no question, but it does, it is effectively, if done right, would serve as an extension to the Muni Metro system, right? Like, so I guess I don't think it doesn't strike me as such a fantastical idea. And I did want to say that. I also just want to say that there was a project relatively recently that I struggled a little bit. I think I eventually got to a yes vote, but which was the widening of an off-ramp to Ocean Avenue, also serving District 7, to add another automobile lane that was also to the tune of about $20 million and also covered a distance of about 1/10 of a mile. So we definitely have a precedent for doing big capital investments over short distances. But that said, there isn't a shuttle there that shuttles people along the length of that off-ramp, which there is here. So I do see the value in the work that was done, and I can see the value in the recommendation that was made. I have like maybe one very small question. Just going back to the operating hours, like where does 6 to 6 come from? Does that come from Laguna Honda? Where does that, like, why those hours and why the frequency of like 15 to 20 minutes?
John Paul, can you please answer that?
I can give my theory of the answer. I don't know the formal answer. Yeah, it seems to be just kind of work hours, and what would be the expected highest demand times. But yeah, that's all I can offer right now.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. I also maybe share a little bit of Member Ortega's like disappointment with that, like that does feel narrow. And I would imagine that at a hospital, they have people who need to take that service at later hours too. The one other question, Director Holmes, you said something that piqued my interest, which was like maybe at 0.6 of a mile, it would make it worthwhile. Like, how, just genuinely, like, where does that point come from? Like, why would you say that?
Yeah, maybe I shouldn't have said it, but I said that because we know of a location in Portland where that is the distance. We haven't studied that, but even minutes before coming on, we were talking because we had a feeling that question would come up, and so we know that it exists for that distance, and so that's why I brought it up. It's likely we would need something longer, but I wanted it to at least give you that's data that we have.
I am curious, and this is the final report, and I appreciate we have to make a decision on this, but I would be curious in the future to understand, like, if we think about return on investment for things, like, again, $20 million, the way we do funding, like capital, is very different than operating. To Member Ortega's point, if you quadrupled the amount of van shuttle service, that would be similar to the amount of service operated at the cost for the gondola. Like it feels a little bit like, I think I intuitively get your point that it doesn't feel like it's worth the juice is not worth the squeeze, essentially. I think I share that. But I also am sort of like,
but why? And how would we know the juice is worth the squeeze? Like, I think that's something I was looking for. But I didn't see it in the memo, but did you look into that kind of return on investment calculation?
John Paul, you did the comparison. Can you please answer that one?
Can you restate the question? Sorry, I missed that part.
I think I asked in a roundabout way, how do we know analytically that there isn't enough return on a $20 million investment for a gondola if we were to hold the level of service constant?
I don't know if we have, there's the return on investment. I think that the challenge was more so that the demand that is estimated for the gondola doesn't really justify the capacity that the gondola is going to provide. So there's just a very huge cost, but not sufficient demand. And so the shuttle is not only cheaper, but for the most part, it can take up all the kind of demand growth projections. And even if there's a growth in demand, then the more affordable approach to uptake that demand would be adding more shuttle service. So I think that, yeah, the trip per passenger cost of the gondola would be significantly higher. So yeah, there's the benefit of the trip itself stays constant, but the cost of that benefit varies.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Member Margarita, is that an old card or new?
Thank you for asking. It's a new card.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. I super again appreciate the presentation and the recommendation. And yes, to remind everybody, I don't know if everybody remembers that Laguna Honda was like shut down for a while. And so that's why it wasn't an easy pass, by the way. I remember the conversation when we met. It was a long conversation because a lot of us had that question like, wait, what? How much is it going to cost them for that short distance, et cetera? But I just wanted to kind of throw it out there that I do think it's a good idea, not necessarily just for Laguna Honda, but in essence for other parts of the city where there's difficulty for elders or people with mobility issues, et cetera, to have access to a shuttle and or bus, muni, et cetera. And so I think that the cost of this study isn't thrown out to a negative, because I think there was research found that maybe this could occur somewhere even outside of District 7 that could benefit the public. Yeah, that was my comment. Thank you.
Member Baumgarten?
Thank you. And I just want to confirm, as part of the findings and conclusions, is there any follow-up study recommended or any follow-up action other than just the statements on those slides? Are there other alternatives other than shuttle or gondola being explored?
I think the findings is only for enhancing the shuttle and do more transportation demand management strategies, and that will yield to more solutions if you need to find some.
Cool. Thank you. One thing I'll just add for the minutes, just for the sake of it, I've definitely seen waivers for things like Lyft or any ride service go into effect, and even with the bike share, there's affordability. If you qualify, you can get passes. I feel like that would be an interesting thing, especially for almost any hospital program. I feel like we should have an interest in all of our residents being able to get to care. So maybe a more broad reaching healthcare kind of waiver system that works with the system that we have in place. So sorry, not so much a comment or question for you guys, but just wanted to throw it out there. So thank you.
Is there any public comment in the room on this item?
Your 2 minutes begins now.
Thank you. I would recommend as a policy for VTA, and for the authority here, that on the studies, you put in there how much this study cost and make that as a policy change. We don't, we're talking about the time comparison and the throughput. That's between point A and point B with the gondola, not point B, C, D, E, F, G, and H, because this is going to be an expanded area. So you're going to have to walk it in the wind, rain, and fog to get from the lobby of the Laguna Honda to wherever you're going to go to point G. And we're not making that comparison for the total time for transit. We're just comparing it to the gondola. The Salesforce gondola, it's been a while since I've been down there, but every time that I was there in the past, it wasn't working. So I don't know why not. There's new technology that's being developed, and you have Lyft that is now saying they're going to be the new transportation system, and they're moving in that direction. So and Waymo now has got a different type of vehicle, a little square box, and you've got Zook that's got the square box and all. So, and they would probably have the same, almost the same capacity of the 8 people like you can fit in the gondola. You can put in that and get them to point G from Forest Hill Station. So your total elapsed time is, how can you compare the throughput on the gondola when that person has to get to point G, which is beyond point B? So, I think we really need to rethink this whole thing if we want to do it. And put down the funding source for these studies.
Thank you
and
for
how
your
much
comment.
that study is costing. Thank you.
Thank you. Operator, is there any remote public comment on this item?
There's no remote public comment.
Great. May I have a motion and a second to approve this item? Moved by Member Levine, seconded by Member Bars. Madam Clerk, can we please get a roll call vote?
On the motion to approve item 9, Member Bars.
Bars, aye.
Bars, aye. Member Baumgarten.
Baumgarten, aye.
Baumgarten, aye. Vice Chair Daniels. Daniels absent. Member Ford.
Ford, aye.
Ford, aye. Member Kim.
Kim, I.
Kim, aye. Member Labaro. Labaro absent. Member Levine. Levine, aye. Member Milford Rosales. Oh, I'm sorry, Member Margarita.
Margarita, aye.
Margarita, aye. Member Milford Rosales.
Milford Rosales, aye.
Milford Rosales, aye. Member Ortega.
Ortega, aye.
Ortega, aye. Chair Siegel.
Siegel, aye.
Siegel, aye. There are 9 ayes. The motion is approved.
Great. Thank you so much. And thanks again for the presentation. We'll move to item 10, the West Side Network Study Update. And we have David Long, Senior Transportation Planner, to present this item. This item was continued from a prior meeting due to time constraints, but the update remains timely. Welcome, Mr. Long.
Thank you, Chair Siegel, and greetings, CAC members. Let's go ahead and share my slides. Okay, thank you. I'm David Long, Senior Planner at the SFCTA, here to share an informational item on the West Side Network Study. So the West Side Network study is being pursued alongside and as an element of the San Francisco Transportation Plan, our city's long-range transportation plan. But this is an element focused on the West Side specifically. It's motivated by a couple of things. One is that we know that land use changes are coming to the West Side after a long period of relative stasis. And we know from our technical work within the SFTP Plus and previous plans that West Siders are more likely to need to drive to accomplish their day-to-day tasks. So we launched this effort as a way to try and understand how to provide better transportation options for West Siders in a mid-year time horizon, so in sort of 10 to 15 time range, which advances our SFTP plus goals. I'm going to share a little bit about our outreach findings from round one, talk about our potential solutions just for a moment, because there are quite a few of them, but broadly sort of share that we are in the midst of our second round of outreach, and invite you all to participate. I know member Kim was able to join us at our last outreach event. We have one this weekend as well. So broadly, during our last round of outreach, we analyzed the SFTP Plus survey, but for West Side responses only, and found that West Siders' priorities aligned with citywide trends, with a few differences. Not surprising, given that we understand West Siders are more likely to drive. Folks were a bit more interested in programs that reduce delays for drivers and funding for pavement, signals, signs, sort of bread and butter road infrastructure. We followed that up with meetings with a number of West Side community-based organizations and talked to them about needs that we had surfaced from a review of plans that have taken place on the West Side over the last 10 years. We're not trying to recreate the wheel, so we talked to folks about what needs identified in those plans remain relevant and what might be missed and new. Broadly, we heard that the previously serviced needs remain relevant. We heard a few areas of focus. That's what you can see in the columns on the right. And we heard an extra emphasis on the need for safety. I have a couple of slides that I'm not going to linger on here, but broadly, one of the things that we are servicing as part of this work, though it's not our sort of core focus, are projects that West Siders can expect to see delivered in the coming years. That's the list of pipeline projects here. These are the things that are included in SFMTA's capital improvement plan. There are also a number of projects that are recommended in existing plans adopted by a decision-making body, but which have not yet been funded. So there's quite a few sort of West Side specific solutions that have been identified and could be implemented if funding were identified. The real contribution of the West Side Network study are new ideas that we have surfaced, which fall into 7 broad categories. Happy to share that across all of the new ideas, we have identified ways to make progress on all of those areas of need. So each column here is an area of need. Each check mark represents an individual project. We're happy to share that each of the areas of need has multiple new ideas that could address that need. And then the sort of real contribution here are these list of new ideas. I know we're already past meeting time, so I'm not going to sort of linger and go through these individually. But I will say that our outreach is currently active right now. We have a number of pop-ups out and ongoing meetings with community-based organizations to talk about these various ideas. Our next step here is to apply an evaluation framework to the list of new ideas, which measures their ability to advance SFTP plus goals with a special focus on the accountability and engagement goal. And you can see the column here, community readiness and support, is highlighted in yellow. That's because one core purpose of this current outreach round is to get a sense of community readiness and support on the West Side for these various ideas, to make sure that the ideas that we're prioritizing in the final plan have broad community support. So again, next steps, we're going to evaluate these ideas, identify a shorter list of priority ideas, which we will bring to the Transportation Authority Board in a final report, likely this fall. Implementing agencies then will need to further prioritize new ideas through their ongoing capital investment planning processes. And I just do want to note that this is a conceptual planning study, and all of these ideas will require additional project development steps, more outreach, and funding to be identified. So what we're asking the community here broadly are the sort of broad thoughts about these ideas, whether there are ideas that they think will land well in their communities or things that are going to cause consternation or folks are hesitant about, whether there are elements of specific ideas that need to be considered specifically in those future project development phases. and whether there are sort of priority locations where we ought to focus these. With that, I will conclude, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for the presentation. Member Kim.
Thank you, Chair, and presentation. And the last Saturday, Richmond District has a night market, and then we have a CTA booth. Happened to be my business booth, cross. So I stay quiet for a while with CTA, and then we meet a lot of residents, and then surprisingly, a lot of people visit CTA booths. They ask questions, they marking some of the new ideas. So it is very good community outreach. And also I met couple of times CTA staffs come to local organization. Couple of organization I belong to, I met them there too. So yeah, I feel like really outreach, very proactive. It's for me, it's the first time I see it's a good, positive things. And I have a couple of questions. Is overall this West Side study, is there any specific purpose for this? I mean, we're very happy, but at the same time, little surprised. We never see this magnitude of outreach. We never experienced.
I guess I'll just say thank you. I'm really pleased to hear that you are happy with the outreach and, have seen us out at sort of multiple locations. I've been happy to see you at multiple of our presentations. And there's there's nothing specific or novel about our approach here that we can't apply to other projects. So we're taking down lessons learned and we'll be sure to apply these best practices moving forward.
Yeah, the reason I ask, maybe this one, some of the idea might fit into we have SF like 2050 plus plan, under that plan, this outreach doing okay. And thank you. And I have the question. Could you explain the field sidewalk gaps? A lot of people ask, what is this?
Yeah, certainly. So one of the new project ideas is to identify and fill sidewalk gaps on the west side. The current locations where we've identified those, there are some along Lincoln, on the north side of Lincoln, adjacent Golden Gate Park, and there are also some sidewalk gaps along the lower grade highway. So those would be the priority locations, and this project would fill those in.
Sorry. So you mean fill the gap is there's a existing sidewalk, but between sidewalk there's some place gap, but sometimes those gap is the cross street. And could you explain more detail?
Yeah, these are locations where there's just no sidewalk.
Oh, so fill the gap means there's certain area there's no sidewalk at all. Okay, got it. Okay, right. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. I am really excited to see this work happening. I'm excited for the final study conclusions, and I'm pleased to see a lot of the new ideas and early recommendations. I was wondering, based on my experience trying to get around the west side via transit, my main observations are that the existing transit routes tend to be, packed like sardines, whether it's weekdays, weekends. There's a long distance to walk between routes if one is not working for you, either trying to go north-south or east-west. It's just especially north-south, but east-west too. Has that come up in feedback much? Just, requests for better both better coverage and also better frequency for the existing routes and people's experience trying to get around, especially on off-peak hours?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Chair. I'd say some of those things have come up. The specific or the more common feedback that we've gotten around the transit ideas have been improving north-south routes and connectivity has been a really, really big one and a consistent theme. Improving connections to regional transit, then folks on the west side have shared that they don't feel like they have good access to our regional transit system. That could be improved in part by improving that north-south connectivity. And then there's sort of reliability and like station area concerns are some of the bigger themes that we've heard.
Member Ortega?
Hi, yeah, I just want to echo what the chair said, especially for like the Richmond area, and other things. Like I would love to see transit that isn't so downtown focused. A lot of the routes always lead to downtown, and I think that this is a really great opportunity for us to look at routes that aren't so downtown centric. Like I'd really love to be able to not have to do a bunch of transfers, and especially because we don't have time transfers for routes. Like I live in Noe Valley, and so it's like I tend to just drive. I'm going to Sunset, I can drive. Yeah, and there is a transit option. It's not that there isn't, but it's kind of 5 times as long, and J frequency isn't that good. So it's kind of it's just like a compounding problem. So I guess like that's a personal thing, but I would love to see less downtown centric routing in for all of it. And north south is definitely a part of it.
Member Ford?
Hi. I endorse the other comments about north-south. I'm D4 rep, so this is my neighborhood. I also endorse the long walking distance. There's some wide streets and big blocks out there. I was wondering about the operational funding challenges because, well, we talk a lot about capital projects, but never have any operational funds. Is the study going to cover operational funding opportunities? Or do we have to do that separately?
Yeah, thank you. It's a great question. I went through the slides fairly quickly, but you may have noticed that some of the ideas, there was an asterisk and it said requires ongoing operational funding, which is a significant challenge right now. So I know that this group is well aware of the fiscal cliff that faces SFMTA and many of our other transit operators. That is very real and remains real. Nothing in this study is changing that. So the study is considering some ideas that would require ongoing operational funding, but our evaluation framework that we apply is going to elevate and make clear the implications of those ideas on ongoing operation and maintenance. And any of these ideas which prioritized and adopted by the board will need to seek and identify funding. So we will include in the final report a funding and implementation chapter, which identifies strategies to achieve that. But any sort of prioritized ideas that have operations and maintenance going costs or implications are challenging in our current situation.
Yeah, Member Kim?
Yeah, I would like to share some update and what I monitor as Member Ortega and Member Ford mentions, and while I stay there, almost whole time I'm back and forth, and a lot of people very interested in the new ideas rather than existing project. Existing project interesting, but people shows huge interest in new ideas. For example, number 1, 29 hours sunset rapid service. Number 2, connection to Daly City Park. So, we already mentioned, north-south connection, especially not necessarily to downtown, to the south. People shows very high interested. So CTA step give stickers to pre-note the board, but those board section is full and then it's coming out. So that was obvious, what people demand. And then the second, I explained to CTA staff, Rachel, Hyatt, and others, as member for the mentions, Gary Boulevard, Clement, that's the street, California Street. And then you have like 6, 7 number, that's the avenue. But avenue block much longer than street. So, but transportation implemented on the street. So street block little shorter than avenue, which means from home to across one block, it's way longer than street. That's why some people other area may not understand why even couple of black people says it's long, it's really long. So that kind of geographic specific characteristic I can explain to the staff on the side. It was a really good experience. Thank you.
Member Ortega, is that still your card from earlier? Or okay, great. Is there any public comment in the room on this item?
Yes, Edward Mason.
Okay. Sorry.
I guess my question is, are we doing any TomTom data or heat mapping of where all the traffic is going and in which direction? I know that before the pandemic, Samtrans wanted to have a bus that would, or a service that would go from the west side down to Palo Alto and into San Mateo County. And they said that there were about 22,000 cell phones that moved in that direction. And that's when I found out about cell phone monitoring and all for transportation. Whether that's changed now after the pandemic, I don't know what the numbers are. So I would think that that would be a critical issue to know where people are going and at what time are they going. So that would be my comment regarding this. Thank you.
Thank you. Operator, is there any remote public comment on this item?
There's no remote public comment for item 10.
Great. Well, thanks so much for the presentation, and we look forward to the final report. All right. Moving on to item 11, state and federal legislation update. This presentation will be delivered by Senior Public Policy Manager Amber Crabb. Welcome, Ms. Crabb.
So when Amber pulls that up, looking to Chair Siegel, she can do a fast or a faster version. And there are also like 3 distinct topics on here. There's sort of 3 buckets of them. Well, I'll just do that. There's status of bills we've been watching and that CARB cap and invest stuff. There's a little section on federal reauthorization, which would be the easiest one to punt if you want. And then a little update on federal AV policy and mixed with little state.
Do any members have particular interest in any items? I know I'm interested in the CARB issues. Yeah.
I'm a little curious on the status of AV issues.
Okay. Can we focus on those? Is that possible? Thank you. Maybe. I'm not sure your mic is on.
Okay, now you can hear me. There we go. Okay, so I will try to skip around a little bit given time, and now I can't, sorry. There we go. Okay, so starting with the state, I'll kind of focus on the things that are most timely and then touch on the AB stuff. So this is just our regular update on where our bills that we have positions on or are on our watch list are at this important point in the session. Of the assembly bills, only one of the bills is no longer advancing, and that unfortunately is AB 2276, the active intelligent speed assistance devices, or the stop super speeders, died. So that's unfortunate, but the others are still advancing. On the Senate side, two are still active. One, the Senate Bill 1411 on our watch list was also died. And this was the bill that would allow high-speed rail spending outside of the Central Valley segment. Just as a reminder, important legislative deadlines, a lot is happening. Bills have until the end of the month to get out of their policy committees. And then they have to be out of both houses by the end of August, with the governor signing, vetoing, or letting bills become law by the end of September. So then December, we start the new 2-year session. So with respect to Cap and Invest, so just a really high level, it's a market-based program that is administered by the Air Resources Board, essentially saying the state has over time, as shown on the right, greenhouse gas emission goals. The expectation is that polluters are going to be reducing their emissions, and in order to pollute, they need to purchase allowances through auctions that happen on a quarterly basis. So this has been working for 10 years. It was just reauthorized last year with a new expenditure program. So, historically, it's supported transportation programs we care a lot about, including the Transit Intercity Rail Capital Program. It builds affordable housing. It provides transit operations funding. But what was approved was kind of this waterfall basis where they assumed the program was going to bring in around $4 billion a year. They said of that, first, we're going to take off funding for CAL FIRE and some other kind of public life safety programs. Then we're going to have a second tier, which is $1 billion for high-speed rail and $1 billion in discretionary funding for the legislature. And then everything, the $2 billion after that, is what's going to fund these important transportation programs and housing programs. So come May, the Air Resources Board decided to do kind of a restructure in the way that the cap and trade auction works. And basically, out of fear of losing certain industries out of state and wanting to see some kind of consumer rebates, they basically cut down on, or they provided extra allowances to a lot of these kind of polluting entities. And the result being, instead of this $4 billion a year, now we can expect about 2.4. And so on the right, that shows what the impact of that is due to the way the expenditure plan was designed. And that's basically zeroing out all the discretionary transportation funding. So just as a reminder, what have we done with these funds in the past? Why are they important? We built 2,100 affordable housing units. We get $8 million a year around on average for transportation from the affordable housing pot. Transit Intercity Rail Capital, like we've seen billions of investment in the region for BART, Caltrain, SFMTA. This is the pot the portal is looking for $750 million from. AB 617 funding, I think this was mentioned earlier, and Cap and Invest goes into those programs to support improvements in those communities. And then transit formula funds, which for Muni alone is about 17 million, and they use it for free and reduced pass programs. So this is critically important. The budget deadline was June 15th. The legislature met that. They did leave this and several other contentious or oft discussed issues off until probably trailer bills in August. They did include, however, in their budget, talk about deferring greenhouse gas emission expenditures, except for the public safety programs until this is resolved, as well as language for statutory changes to the program, which could include updates to the expenditure plan or some other adjustments. So that is the state budget. And then touching on AV policy, there's been also a lot that's happened in the last 6 months or since late last year when we last provided kind of an overarching AV summary. Since then, the DMV has released regulations around autonomous vehicles, mostly robo-taxis, that basically establishes a new notice of AV non-compliance. So they still can't be ticketed, but they can be issued one of these to document that it was doing something wrong. It requires some data reporting during deployment that we were happy to see. We do still have some concerns that are not being addressed, and we worked with Assembly members Stephanie and Haney, and they ended up issuing a letter to the DMV articulating those concerns, including the need for more data, needing clear consequences. You know, what is a notice of AV noncompliance if it's not a ticket? And then in response to the December 20th event that we saw in San Francisco with the PG&E outages, really emphasizing the need for all hands on deck to figure out mitigating risk and protecting the public during these kind of mass resilience events. So the AV bill that we are watching that is still active is Senate Bill 1246, and it is really focused on AV enforcement and emergency response. It passed out of Assembly Transportation on Monday, has 2 more committees to go, but we're in touch with the author and talking about its future amendments. So with that, I can stop there unless you want me to talk about federal surface transportation, or I can talk a little bit about federal AV stuff, but that can also wait. There's nothing urgent.
Would members like to hear about either of those?
Okay.
Or are we okay to, I'm asking.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Would any members specifically like a deep dive on those, or should we pause for tonight? I think if okay.
I'm open to pausing on the
Okay.
federal AV legislation.
All right, great. Well, I think then we'll pause there. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Do any members have any questions or comments? Yeah, Member Milford Rosales.
So the last time that we got a state legislative update of any kind of AV legislation was, I believe, the end of April. I was sick that day, made some comments via Zoom, and realized shortly afterwards that an article had dropped in which the head of SF Bike claimed that Waymo told him off the record that we will park and do pickup and drop off in bike lanes because the customers demand it, was the exact quote he shared. Waymo did not deny or push back at all. They just refused to comment. Has that changed anything, or do we know if that's changed anything, or if that's made the rounds with the legislators that we're working with at the state level?
I haven't specifically discussed that with anyone, but I'm probably subscribed to a lot of the same news feeds you are, in that like it does appear a lot, those in similar types of complaints. Speaking more generally, I can say that in talking to various legislators, there's an awareness of the need for addressing a lot of the concerns that are happening, but there's also recognition that there are top priorities to focus on. And I think this year, for example, with Senator Cortese's bill, SB 1246, is really, really focused on interference with emergency responders. So I think, we're making incremental steps. Assembly Bill 1777 from Assemblymember Ting is going into effect next Wednesday, July 1st. So we're just going to now be seeing the impacts of that legislation on the way that this technology is operating in the city. So I think, in summary, like I'm seeing selected issues rise to the surface as strategically, rather than trying to handle everything at once.
I guess, yeah, my comment on that is tied to just I see the major issues right now with AVs in California being that first we have fair priority, like just the whole way they behave around emergency response. But I believe that sort of tied to that on the second tier is that we can't ticket or fine them or do anything about moving violations. So them just no commenting on a statement that they will commit moving violations because it's good for business seems, I don't know if that could add, not necessarily that it seems like it means we need a new bill to target moving violations, but is that in any way something that adds teeth or adds kind of a bit of ammunition to use on getting tighter laws passed around interference with emergency vehicles?
I am not a legislator. I can't. I think there's persuasive evidence out there about people's motivations that definitely can be taken into perspective when you're making decisions about lawmaking.
Thank you very much.
Member Bars.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. Can I get the 30-second explanation about what happened to the Super Speeders Act, please?
Well, before I answer that, I totally forgot to recognize Martin Reyes and John Paul Velez, who are not on screen, which is why I missed them, but they're also here. They've supported this presentation, or subject matter experts too. So before I answer, my understanding that one hit several issues, kind of common across all legislation, is an acknowledgement of anything that came at a cost to the budget received a lot of scrutiny, and it would have increased costs to the DMV. And then also with that one, I believe there was also privacy concerns that were being weighed as the bill was being discussed. But I think it was the death knell was the impact to the state budget.
Amber, would I add, is it also specifically DMV insolvency?
Yeah. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Sorry, I have to use this. So then, just to say this more boldly, the DMV said it would be expensive to implement operationally to the tune of it would make them go insolvent.
I think they're already looking at insolvency. And so this is like any incremental additional cost for work they have to do is, it's just snowballing the problem of their insolvency.
Amber.
There's like a whole other series of questions about DMV insolvency, but I am going to refrain now.
Member Ford, can you all hear me? Yeah. Hi, everybody. Good evening, CAC members. Martin Reyes, Principal Transportation Planner. I'll just add a little bit more, background to this. It's not necessarily DMV insolvency. It's the insolvency of the motor vehicle account, which is funded by driver's license fees, vehicle registration fees, that sort of thing. And the motor vehicle account actually funds not only the DMV, but also the CHP, the California Highway Patrol. And so that fund itself is what's facing insolvency. And so the state is trying to address this issue, but any bill, actually, there's also an e-bike bill that sort of met a similar fate to the Stop Super Speeders Act. Any bill that adds costs to the DMV, which relies largely on the motor vehicle account, is sort of a no-go, at least during this session, just because it will sort of make the issue worse and harder for the state to deal with. So that's the bigger background. It's not necessarily just DMV, but it's the broader motor vehicle account that funds DMV and other agencies and uses.
We could have a whole nother night of presentations about why we need to raise the gas tax, but we'll say that for not after hours.
Thank you for that information. Yeah. If there are no other comments or questions from members, is there any public comment in the room on this item?
Edward Mason regarding e-bikes. I'm sorry I was out of the room for that, but is there any progress on trying to enact legislation to license e-bikes and all types of vehicles that are propelled in that way? Because whether they're scooters or e-bikes, they're on the sidewalk. And as far as I'm concerned, it's a hazard, because I've been confronted by an e-bike. I couldn't believe it. I was coming down in the opposite direction on 24th Street on an e-bike and was ruling the road. So I hope that there's some thought of licensing these. And if you do license it, okay, so maybe you'll get 80% of the people to think that they then have a responsibility. The other 20%, well, you're going to have problems with those people forever. But at least you can solve 80% of the people by licensing the operation of these vehicles. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Operator, is there any remote public comment on this item?
Yes, there's one remote public comment. Roland, go ahead and you can unmute. There you go.
Thank you. So
Okay.
first of all, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So first of all, I would like to echo Edward Mason's comment. I was personally nearly wiped out by an e-bike on the Townsend last year, somewhere between 4th and 7th. But the thing I really want to bring to your attention, going back to the subject at hand on legislation, is I attended the high-speed rail board meeting this morning, and I was very, very surprised to hear that the annual $1 billion in GGRF is currently being contested, which essentially is going to make the entire business plan invalid. I'm researching this right now, trying to find some background, but this is breaking news as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. There is no further remote public comment for this item.
Great. Thank you again for the presentation and for sticking with us so late. Appreciate it. All right, we'll move on to item 12, introduction of new business. Do any CAC members have any new business? All right, in that case, we'll go to item 13. This is public comment, general public comment on items under the Transportation Authority CAC's purview that are not otherwise agendized at this meeting. Is there anyone in the hearing room wishing to give public comment? Not seeing any operators or any remote public comment.
Yes, go ahead, Roland. Let's see, wait for the clock to go up. There you go. Your 2 minutes begins now.
Okay, great. So I'd like to very briefly summarize the comments I made at the Metropolitan Transportation Commission this morning. There was a request for funding for BART core capacity, which I supported. But apparently VGA are also expecting to get $750 million, which is a combination of 375 in RM3, and the other 375 is SB 125. And, okay, what happened last week in Santa Clara County is that the VTA was slapped with a grand jury report, which is absolutely damning and which is very, very likely to impact the potential passage of a regional measure in the fall. So I made it very clear that I'm not the one that did that because I knew what the impact would have been if I had done it. So what I suggested is that the commission withhold any further approval of the $750 million to VTA for the BART extension until they've addressed all the issues that the civil grand jury has raised. Because potentially, if now this measure fails, in the fall, we're going to have to find more collateral funding to potentially, get another loan to keep both BART and Muni alive. And that's why I did this. I hope you understand what I just said, that you will look at it and that you will support it. I will try to forward that letter, but it's under item number 11C and 15 on the MTC board meeting agenda this morning. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. And there are no further remote public comments.
Great, thank you. That puts us on item 14, which is adjournment. Thank you all. This meeting is now adjourned.